Welcome to According to Sam, folks. This is episode 362. Thank you for joining me. Got a lot to share with you guys today, so we're just going to pick up where we left off in the last podcast. And I want to start today's podcast talking about the book, War is a Racket, and the man who wrote the book, War is a Racket. If you're not familiar with this book or the man, the book was written by Smedley Butler, and he was a decorated general in the Marines. He participated in many theaters of war, the Philippine American War, the Boxer Rebellion, the Mexican Revolution. He was part of World War I, and he was a very decorated general in the Marines. And he not only wrote the book War is a Racket, but War is a Racket was a speech. The theme of the book came from a speech that he wrote after he had retired from the Marine Corps. And he said that all of these wars that he participated in were just a racket by the wealthy to get rich, to increase their wealth at the expense of the lives that were lost in the war, at the expense of the cost of the war and the actual cost, and then the blowback of the later repercussions of war. That it was a racket is what Smedley Butler said. And Smedley Butler became famous because of the business plot. Now, the business plot, it was a plot to overthrow the Franklin Roosevelt administration and instill a fascist government, a Mussolini-style fascist government. Now, give you some context on the business plot. We'll talk about the Bonus Army real quick. So the Bonus Army was a event that happened after World War I, and Woodrow Wilson had promised all of these veterans from World War I that he was going to pay them bonuses that were never paid. And then after the Wilson administration, the Bonus Army starts to camp on the lawn there at the White House, or in Washington. I'm not sure if they were at the White House or at the mall across. I think they were at the mall across from the White House, where 1,700 or 17,000 veterans and their families just camped there in front of the White House in the mall, and they were demanding that the then president, who was Herbert Hoover, that Herbert Hoover paid the bonuses that Woodrow Wilson had promised them. And they camped for a long period of time. They were disgruntled. Herbert Hoover eventually gets Douglas MacArthur and General Patton. And he ordered them to deploy their military on these veterans, deploy the American military on these veterans that were camped there in D.C., demanding that these bonuses that Woodrow Wilson had promised them. And so MacArthur and Patton, they basically clear out the encampments, and a lot of people were hurt. A lot of people were, I think that there were some people that were killed as well. I'm not sure how many people were killed, but it was violent. The MacArthur and Patton, they violently cleared out, with the American military, cleared out this encampments of these veterans from World War I who had been camped there in D.C., demanding the bonuses that were promised to them. So they were disgruntled, and the business plot is that these financiers, these rich robber barons, they approached Smedley Butler, who was the decorated general, and they wanted to get him to rally all these disgruntled veterans from World War I who had been attacked by the American military, prompted by President Hoover, and they wanted to get these rich robber barons, these rich corporate titans from New York City approach Smedley Butler. They wanted to get Smedley Butler to rally these disgruntled veterans to create an army to overthrow Franklin Roosevelt. Roosevelt was the president after Herbert Hoover, and he was the president at this time when these financiers approached Smedley Butler to get him to overthrow the American government, overthrow Franklin Roosevelt, and install a fascist government. I have a clip here. We'll start with this clip that goes into Smedley Butler. Now, what happened was Smedley Butler, he played these guys along for long enough to understand their plans, to understand their plot. He made them think that he was going to lead this army to overthrow the government. And then once he got their plans, he went to Congress and he ratted them out to Congress. And then this is a part of the speech that he gave testifying to what had gone on.
Appeared before the Congressional Committee, the highest representation of the American people, under subpoena to tell what I knew of activities which I believe might lead to an attempt to set up a fascist dictatorship. The plan as outlined to me was to form an organization of veterans, to use as a bluff or as a club at least, to intimidate the government and break down our democratic institutions.
You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. After a globe-trotting career spanning countries from Haiti to the Philippines, Marine General Smedley Butler retired in 1931, hailed as a national hero and one of the most distinguished soldiers in U.S. history. General Butler also gained popularity as an advocate for veterans during the Great Depression. Since the returning soldiers could not find employment, General Butler pushed for the delivery of signing bonuses promised to every enlisted man. He was set to become one of the most influential anti-war activists in history. But in 1934, he came forward with an unusual story for members of Congress. General Butler alleged that members of the U.S. elite attempted to hire him to build an army and stage a military coup, ousting the controversial Franklin Roosevelt and revoking the legislation of the New Deal. Butler had originally played along, leveraging his initial contact for more details and eventually meeting with one of the principal investors face to face. Butler stated that the conspirators wanted him to muster an army of 500,000 veterans and other patriots, paying their bonuses and financing the cost of their weapons with money provided by the conspirators. These men, Butler said, wanted to establish a government modeled on Italian-style fascism. Although newspapers...
They wanted Butler to raise up this army to stage a coup d'etat in the United States to install a Mussolini-style fascist government. That's very important, a Mussolini, because what is a Mussolini-style fascist government? We're going to talk about that here in a moment. But it's called the business plot because these were robber barons. These were corporate titans and bankers from New York City that were businessmen that they approached Butler and said that we'll pay the bonuses to these disgruntled veterans, and we'll pay and give them the money, just raise up this army and overthrow the Roosevelt administration and install a Mussolini-style fascist government. That's very important.
Army of 500,000 veterans and other patriots, paying their bonuses and financing the cost of their weapons with money provided by the conspirators. These men, Butler said, wanted to establish a government modeled on Italian-style fascism. Although newspapers of the time ridiculed the allegations, Congress moved forward with a formal investigation. Here's where it gets crazy. In the McCormick-Dickstein Report of 1935, Congress found that plans for a military coup involving a private army headed by General Butler did exist. The Congress found that certain individuals had planned for this coup, but did not specify when the plan had been conceived, nor when or if it would seriously be implemented. So who were the alleged ringleaders of this plot? Although the congressional investigation focuses on only two men, Mr. McGuire and Mr. Clark, dozens of other individuals have been named as contributors to the business plot with varying degrees of proof. The names of the conspirators included some of the United States' most wealthy families in banking, media, and industry.
Some of the United States' most wealthy families in banking, industry, and media. So these were the conspirators that approached Smedley Butler to overthrow the government and establish a Mussolini fascist type of government. It didn't work because Smedley Butler ratted them out. He gathered all their information and then went to Congress, and then nobody went to jail. Nobody was arrested. And I've always asked this question. So what do you, if you're planning a plot to stage a coup d'etat in the United States and overthrow the American government, and the mistake that you made is that you choose the wrong general, the wrong person to lead the army, and he rats you out, what do? Do you just decide that, no, I don't want to overthrow the government anymore? Or do you come up with a different plan that is more fail-proof, where you don't have to depend on the morals and the integrity of a general to carry it out? You do it without doing that. And that's exactly what happened in 1963 in Dallas on Daley Plaza, is that these same conspirators from the business plot, they tried again, but instead of approaching a general to establish a military coup, they shot the president of the United States in the face in front of the whole world. If you don't understand that the assassination of John F. Kennedy was just the business plot part 2, then you should do some more research, because that's exactly what the assassination of John F. Kennedy was the business plot part 2. So Smedley Butler ratted them out, and that's what I was trying to get you guys to understand about, what happened in the Iraq War. Even though the false intelligence and the selling of the Iraq War was being run out of the Pentagon by men like Paul Wolfowitz, who is a Jew, Douglas Feith, who is a Jew, and you had Mossad in the Pentagon, like Lawrence Wilkerson said, and they were all crafting the narrative and coming up with the phony intelligence to sell the war in Iraq. I said, well, Don Rumsfeld's not a Jew. He's not a Jew. George W. Bush is not a Jew. Dick Cheney's not a Jew. Scooter Libby's not a Jew. What motivated these men that are not Jewish, to execute this plot to sell the war in Iraq, to stage 9/11, quite frankly, to take us off to war? If these guys aren't Jew, it can't. That's the point that I was trying to make, is that this is larger than saying that it's the Jews. The Jews are running everything, and all of these, dangerous plots and taking us to these foreign wars and running up our debt and putting us into debt slavery. It's bigger than the Jews, is what I was trying to get you guys to understand by saying you have so many players that are not Jews. And the business plot was robber barons. I mean, the DuPonts come from France, but it wasn't only the DuPonts. I mean, who are these robber barons? Who are the robber barons that established most of the industry in New York City, the banking industry, the corporate industry? Carnegie's not a Jew. Rockefeller's not a Jew. Listen to more of this clip, because they talk about Bush's grandfather, Prescott.
Including the DuPonts, the Remingtons, and Prescott Bush, father of George H. Bush and grandfather of George W. Bush.
Prescott Bush worked for Averell Harriman. Averell Harriman's father owned the railroads. He was a railroad baron. And Prescott Bush worked for the banking firm Brown Brothers Harriman, they were representing financiers of Hitler, of the Nazis. They actually, Roosevelt actually seized the profits of Brown Brothers Harriman in the trading with the Enemies Act, and they seized all their profits. The Averell Harriman, Prescott Bush worked for Brown Brothers Harriman. He was a banker at the same time that he was a senator. He's not Jewish. None of these people were Jewish. So this is bigger than a Jewish plot, is what I've been trying to get you to understand. And I've been telling you that the the debt, as we've seen our debt climb to now $38.2 trillion, and what we've seen happen over the last 25 years with our debt, largely because of the foreign policy. And I'm going to explain, it didn't all come from the disastrous foreign policy, but because of the disastrous foreign policy, it set us on this course of debt to where when we have other issues that come along, other fiscal issues like dealing with our entitlements, dealing with you can't really bring up the financial crash in 2008 because that was these same people. They set up the crash. If you understand that they set up the crash in the Clinton administration and they knew that the crash was going to happen in 2008, that was all part of this. But if it was organic, we would have had the funds to handle these crises if we hadn't spent all this money on these foreign wars that these guys set up. And that is what Smedley Butler meant when he said war is a racket. It is a racket to make these people rich. This money that comes out of the public treasury and puts us in debt, it goes into the private hands of people like these people, like Prescott Bush and his family and others around the world. So it's not just the Jews. It's not just the Jews. And I always like to think, so if you look at this chart, I've explained what this chart is before, but this chart, every color represents $1 trillion. How fast the United States is adding $1 trillion to the debt. If you look from 1996 to 2002, 1996, 7 years to add $1 trillion to the national debt is what it took. Between 1996 and 2002, it took 7 years to add $1 trillion to the national debt. And like I told you, we're adding $1 trillion to the national debt every 90 to 120 days now. How does this happen? Well, it all starts right here. 2002 is when it starts. When we start adding $1 trillion to the national debt every 3 years, every 2.5 years, 2.5 years, 2 years, and then every year $1 trillion to the national debt. And then, like I said, it's every 90 to 120 days that we're adding $1 trillion to the national debt. It all started in 2002, post 9/11, as we're building up to the war in Iraq, as we're increasing, creating a new department, the Department of Homeland Security, and taking our armies into Afghanistan, Iraq, and when Obama comes in, and Libya, Syria. Yes, all of the debt is not created by the foreign policy, but the foreign policy and the debt created by the foreign policy, it limits us on things that we're able to do domestically here, like domestic issues like the entitlements and when we have crises like the financial crisis or a pandemic like COVID, it limits what we're able to do. Well, it doesn't limit what we're able to do. We just have to go further into debt to do those things that we would have had reserves if we hadn't spent all this money on this foreign policy. And then the interest on the debt increases. It all started with the foreign policy post 9/11. And I'll always talk about, if you haven't listened to my podcast before, I always talk about, think about, what the world would look like if 9/11 wouldn't happen. Think about what America would have looked like if 9/11 wouldn't have happened. And I always talk about this document that was secret until 2011 when NPR retrieved this document through a FOIA request, and it was made public 10 years after the document was composed. And this is the document right here. It's called Life After Debt. And you can see the date here, the date that this was composed, November 3rd, 2000. This is when Bill Clinton was president of the United States. His Treasury Secretary was Larry Summers. Larry Summers has just been in the news because he's in all the Epstein documents. Larry Summers went to the Epstein Island and everybody. He was Bill Clinton's Treasury Secretary at this time, and they were predicting that the United States was going to be completely debt-free at the rate that we were going. If 9/11 didn't happen and we didn't go and fight all these wars, in 10 years, we were going to be completely debt-free. So I've talked about this before. This gives a motive. This offers a motive for why these people conspired to do 9/11 and to take us into these wars. That the mission, the true mission, was to increase our debt so we wouldn't be able to be debt free and get rid of all of our debt. And if you understand how this happened, the cost plus contracts and just throwing money away, the objective was to increase our debt because the United States was getting ready to be completely debt free in 10 years. And this is what the Clinton administration was predicting in 2000. November 2000 is when this document is composed, Life After Debt. And it was composed and it was distributed throughout the Clinton administration as a warning. The United States is going to be completely debt free, and it's a warning. It's going to be a crisis because the United States is going to be completely debt free. And then just 10 months later, in September of 2001, you have a life-changing event like the September 11 attacks. And then there's no longer a threat, and there's no longer a warning that the United States is going to be completely debt-free anymore. I want you to listen to a little bit of this interview from this article.
From NPR News, this is All Things Considered. I'm Robert Siegel.
I'm Melissa Block. And now a story about a secret government document that dates from the Clinton administration, outlining what was believed to be a looming potential crisis.
Crises.
Not a matter of terrorism or national security. No, the crisis was, imagine this, the possibility that the U.S. might pay off its entire debt. David Kestenbaum with our Planet Money team got hold of the document and explains why it was buried until today.
The document is called Life After Debt. I heard about it from Diane Lim Rogers, an economist at the White House who reviewed it at the time. It was written in 2000, and Diane had not seen it since then, until I gave her the copy. For her, it brought home just how much has happened since then.
How much has happened?
The document just reminded me of a lot of things I'd forgotten. Like, I'd completely forgotten that we were projecting that the debt would be completely paid off by 2012.
Remember those times? The economy was booming. The U.S. government was actually running a surplus, taking in more than it was spending.
Remember those times the government was taking in more than it was spending, actually running a surplus. You're talking about this time right here. We're talking about this time where it took 7 years to add $1 trillion to the national debt. And they were predicting that the United States was going to pay off all of its debt in a decade. By 2012, that the United States was going to pay off all of its debt, and they identified it as a crisis in the Clinton administration. And then 10 months later, 9/11 happens.
And everyone agreed it was, but it also posed a danger that this document was spelling out. If the U.S. paid off its debt, there would be no more U.S. Treasury bonds in the world. That's how the U.S. borrows money. It sells bonds. So no more debt meant no more bonds. Yeah,
it meant no more bonds, but it meant no more usury. It meant no more interest on all this debt. We pay over $1 trillion in interest now on our national debt. Where does that money go? That money wouldn't have existed for those people that are receiving that $1 trillion in interest that we pay annually on this debt if the United States was completely debt free. We would have had more money to stabilize our entitlements, Medicare, Social Security, and other things like that. We'd have had money in reserves in case there is a crisis like the pandemic or the financial crisis, which they also created in the Clinton administration. These same people, Larry Summers, Robert Rubin, Alan Greenspan. These are the robber barons, people. These are the people. They're not all Jewish. Alan Greenspan is. But Larry Summers, Lawrence Summers isn't a Jew. I think Robert Rubin is. But what I'm trying to get you to understand is that this is bigger than a Jewish conspiracy. There's more people involved. There's more going on here. More going on. All right, so I want to get back into some more clips here from the Trigonometry podcast and the interview they did with Dave Smith. And they get into all of these topics. And in this clip, they're trying to convince Dave Smith that America is an empire and that empire is good. I want you to listen to how this goes.
We had that same reaction to Iraq in particular. But I also think the going to the other extreme and saying there is no situation when we have to go out, and particularly if you are America. And look, I know this is maybe an area we might disagree as well. You like it or not, America is a global empire.
Like it or not, America is a global empire. Now, both of these guys are British. I think Constantine was born in Russia. They're all Jewish. Everyone in this podcast is Jewish. Even Dave Smith is Jewish, Jewish by heritage. But they're trying to convince Dave Smith that the isolationist foreign policy and America first, America alone foreign policy is not feasible because America is an empire. I didn't know that America was an empire. I always thought that America was a constitutional republic. When the founding fathers met in Philadelphia to hash out the Constitution, I didn't know that they created an empire. But Constantine here is telling Dave Smith that America is an empire.
We might disagree as well. You like it or not, America is a global empire. America's 5% of the world's population consumes 25% of the world's resources. That's why you guys are so prosperous. That's why you're doing as well as you are.
We're prosperous because we consume 25% of the world's resources? No, we consume 25% of the world's resources because we're prosperous. Other way around,
America's 5% of the world's population consumes 25% of the world's resources. That's why you guys are so prosperous. That's why you're doing as well as you are. It's why you get to have your way in all sorts of international debates and discussions and whatever. But that empire is maintained by sometimes getting the club out and going, you guys need to fall in line here. Is that a fair assessment?
So he's saying that we have to go to war. We have to go to war to maintain the empire, is what Constantine is saying here.
Getting the club out and going, you guys need to fall in line here. Is that a fair assessment?
I mean, I think it's to some degree a factual assessment. I mean, yes, America is an empire. And in order to be an empire, yeah, there has to be like a threat of violence that you're going to have to use at times. So I don't disagree with that. But I guess I would just say that, like, you know, if we're accepting that as the premise that, like, look, America is this empire, well, then it's like, I do think at a certain point, because I see so many conversations about democracy and the rule of law and all of this.
No, fuck all that.
Well, I'm just saying, but that's my point.
I'm Russian. It's like realpolitik.
Well, that's the thing, which I think it almost leads you to accept. Look, the people of the United States of America never had a referendum on empire. We never decided that we wanted to be an empire.
We never had a referendum on. Dave is hitting it out of the park here. We never had a referendum. Who made us an empire? The founding fathers didn't make us an empire. We never had a referendum that said, yeah, we want to become an empire. Who made us an empire? When did we become an empire? When did we become an empire? Prescott Bush. When did we become an empire? When did we become an empire? Dick Cheney, Don Rumsfeld, Scooter Libby. Who made us an empire? And who told you guys that we wanted to be an empire and to make take the United States from being a constitutional republic to an empire? When did that happen? It's a very good question, Dave.
Russian is like realpolitik.
Well, that's the thing, which I think it almost leads you to accept. Look, the people of the United States of America never had a referendum on empire. We never decided that we wanted to be an empire. And in fact, I could argue that the peace candidate running for president almost always wins. I mean, like, it's almost always a huge advantage. You can go all the way back.
We don't want an empire.
And the Constitution, the law of the land, does not say that we're an empire. We're supposed to be a limited constitutional republic. And you can't be both. You can't be a limited constitutional republic domestically and a global empire abroad.
Why is that?
Because a government that is big enough to rule the whole world is also too big to be a limited
it's the
government.
Leviathan. That's what Thomas Hobbes warned us about when he wrote Leviathan. That once you have this huge empire, that's what happened to the Roman Empire. It got so big, spreading out to the east, going as far west as as Gaul and England, and they spread themselves too thin that they couldn't protect their borders from the Goths coming across the border, invading their border, because they spread themselves out to a huge empire, which they started off as a republic, just like us. They started off as a republic, but then they go from a republic to an empire, and then eventually the empire becomes too big and that it collapses on itself because it's so big. It's this huge Leviathan that is uncontrollable. Even the people that created it can't control it anymore. That's what Dave is saying here, and he's absolutely right.
A global empire abroad.
Why is that?
Because a government that is big enough to rule the whole world is also too big to be a limited government. It's
and the essence of conservatism. And it's interesting that this fight is going on in the conservative party. And there's some conservatives that are saying that we want, America first, America only, small government. That's the essence of conservatism, is small government. And that these guys making us an empire, the neo-conservatives, they're calling them the kosher conservatives now. That's what they're calling them, the kosher conservatives. I thought that was hilarious. But it's not just the Jews. It's not just the influence of Israel. This is bigger than that. And that's what I'm trying to get you to understand here. It's bigger than that. But the kosher conservatives, the neo-conservatives, they're the ones who wanted to make us this huge empire. And they have to grow government. You have to grow government to make us an empire, is what Dave Smith's saying. You have to grow government. And a huge government is not conservative. That's not conservative at all.
And a global empire abroad.
Why is that?
Because a government that is big enough to rule the whole world is also too big to be a limited government. It's too big to be a limited constitutional government. And in fact, it can't be limited. It needs to have emergency powers. It needs to be able to, as you just said, exert force anywhere around the world.
Absolutely.
If someone's not acting the way you want to act. And so to me, that's the whole essence of the game, is that it's like, if we're going to be an empire, we can't be a republic.
I see.
And so if you want to save the republic, we have to abandon empire.
It's one or the other. Either we want to be a republic or we want to be a empire. Here's another clip from this podcast, and they're still talking about this concept of empire, because these two guys, these two European Jews, British guys, trying to convince Dave Smith that no, we need the United States to be this empire. We want the United States to go out and throughout all of the world and police the world, because if they don't do it, he gets into it right here. If they don't do it, it leaves a vacuum.
I'm not sure what you said about empire, Joe. I mean, we had one of the greatest historians. I'm not resorting to arguments from authority. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying.
You guys had Darryl Cooper on?
Dominic Sambrook, part of the Rest is History. I think they've got the biggest history podcast in the world. And he talked about the fact that empires are the natural unit of history. Like, if you look throughout history, that tends to be the way that the great powers of the world operate.
Yeah,
empires,
and also
right?
all of those empires came crashing down as well.
So I don't know that it's fair to say that America's problems or any country's problems are about forever wars, because I don't. The entire Western world, including countries that weren't involved in the foreign wars, are all making the same mistake. And I think that mistake is not foreign policy, although as we discussed, there's been some pretty fucking big mistakes. It's about entitlements and benefits. And
that's true too. I mean, for sure.
Yeah. Absolutely true. So let me explain to you what he's saying here, what Konstantin is saying here. He's saying that all of this didn't come from foreign policy. And he's right. It didn't all come from foreign policy. All this didn't come from the disastrous foreign policy. Most of it, the majority of our debt is entitlements. The majority of our budget right now is entitlements. Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, and those entitlements, he says that they're a strain on the budget, a strain on the debt because of the entitlements. And he says that that's what Europe has gotten in trouble with. Yeah, of course, because you guys are socialists. We don't want to be socialists. A lot of that entitlement is driven by left-wing politics, by the Democratic Party. It's not driven by right-wing politics and the Conservative Party. And the point that I'm trying to get people to understand is that if we were debt-free, like they were predicting that we were going to be by 2012, and we didn't have this massive debt to deal with, then we would be able to deal with our entitlements. We would be able to have money to stabilize our entitlements and we would have money in reserves. But the foreign policy has done, and this expansion of the American empire has done, it has limited what we're able to do domestically. The foreign policy and the advancing of the empire hurts us and our domestic policy. And him bringing up the fact that most of our debt is entitlements, which is true. I mean, it's not all entitlements. A lot of it is, is COVID, the financial crisis, the bailouts, all that stuff. But it was all started by the disastrous foreign policy that started the ball rolling on this massive debt, and that limited what we were able to do domestically. And they don't seem to get that.
It's about entitlements and benefits. And
that's true too. I mean, for sure. Yeah.
That's where I think actually we've basically got to a situation, and I can't remember whose quote it is, but we talked about this with one of our guests, where the public have worked out that they can vote to get more shit from the government and punish anyone electorally who says we can't give you more free shit. And so in the UK, more people take more out of the benefit system than they put in. 51%.
Because you guys are socialists. And that's the whole debate. That's what Bernie Sanders has been talking about, and all of these, communist, democratic socialists. That's what they're talking about. That's the democratic socialist point of view, is they want European style socialists. Of course, that's what's happening in Europe. We don't want that to happen to us here in the United States. Of course, you guys are having all these fiscal issues in Europe because of your socialism. We don't want that. But yes, you're right. That is exactly what's happening in Europe. And it's happening here in the United States. And we want to prevent that from happening in the United States, what's happening to you guys in Europe.
We can't give you more free shit. And so in the UK, more people take more out of the benefit system than they put in, 51% of the public, right? And I think that's really the death spiral that we're in. We can't reduce our spending, and we can't reduce our debt, and we can't reduce our deficit because we don't want to forgo the free shit.
Yeah, well, I think that's right. And I think this is true on a lot of different levels, right? Certainly I know a bit more about America than Europe, but look, I mean, the bottom line for all this is we have a government that's way bigger than what we can afford. Right? It's just much, much bigger than what we can afford.
100%.
And so you can't tax enough to get there. So you have to tax your population, then you have to borrow a whole bunch of money, but even that's not enough. So then you got to print the money, right? And these are
printing the money is the debasement of the currency. Same thing that happened in Rome. Same thing that happened in Spain. Same thing that happened to all of these empires, is that eventually you start debasing your currency. That's the beginning of the end. And one of the other things they don't mention here is austerity. You have to tax your citizens, you have to borrow money, you have to print money, debasing your currency, and then you also have to implement austerity eventually, and austerity is next for the United States. We're already having the debates about austerity.
Then you have to borrow a whole bunch of money, but even that's not enough. So then you got to print the money, right? And these are essentially the three ways government can raise money or can spend money. And so what you have now is that, there are these giant entitlement programs that, it's much more politically advantageous for Donald Trump to say, I'll never cut Social Security or Medicare, because he's got to lock up that base of seniors who are Republicans. And also just the monetary system just keeps the prices of everything going up and up and up. And what it ends up creating in a weird way.
The monetary system keeps the prices going up and up and up because that is called inflation. The currency is being inflated. When you print more money and you create more debt, that is inflating the currency. So that drives the prices up. These are just basic economic principles.
Donald Trump to say, I'll never cut Social Security or Medicare, because he's got to lock up that base of seniors who are Republicans. And also just the monetary system just keeps the prices of everything going up and up and up. And what it ends up creating in a weird way is a justification for socialism. Absolutely. I mean, when these kids say, they'll say things like profit is theft. And I think it's very easy for guys like us to look at it and go, hey, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. Because the idea that what type of fixed pie fallacy is that? That if I go out there and I'm successful, that doesn't mean I'm taking it from you. That means I'm creating more wealth. I'm creating a bigger pie with more slices. But the thing is that under this current paradigm, they do kind of have a point. I bought a house 3 years ago, just about exactly 3 years ago. And I just got, this isn't an official appraisal or anything like that, but I got a letter from my real estate agent that said the house is up $200,000 in the last 3 years. And that does seem, based on the listings I've seen the house is selling for, that seems about right. And you think about that in a way, you're like, wait, so what is that other than like essentially welfare from the system? That because I'm in the owner class, because I got into the owner class 3 years ago, I now get an extra 200 grand of my net worth, and the bar for young people to go buy a house is now that much higher. It's like I kind of did take that from them in a sense, but then like as we're starting to hit this point where the young generation is getting so left behind, you still have these entitlement programs that are transfers of wealth from the young people to the wealthier older people. And think about how crazy that is.
And it's crazy, especially because there are fewer and fewer young people relative to the number of older people. But
that's why they are flooding us with immigrants. That's exactly why they're flooding us with immigrants.
Or older people. And think about how crazy that is.
And it's crazy, especially because there are fewer and fewer young people relative to the number of older people. But are you I think you're agreeing with me, which I appreciate, but isn't that kind of the point that while the foreign wars are bad and wrong and immoral in some cases, it's not really them that's causing all these problems.
Oh, I mean, it's a huge driver of it too. I mean, look, if you look at the American government, at this point, it's the entitlements, the defense budget, and the interest on the debt.
But the defense budget isn't about fighting all these foreign wars. The defense budget is about protecting your empire, which gives you access to.
See, he has no idea. Europe, right? He has no idea what's going on. These wars are not fought using the defense budget. The wars are fought using supplemental funds. All these people are coming out now about the money that's budgeted, the aid that we give to Israel. Israel gets $3 billion budgeted aid, which comes in vouchers that they can only spend on military equipment here in the United States. And that's what is budgeted that we give aid to Israel a year. Per year, it's $3 billion. Since October 7th, 2023, in supplemental funds to Israel, we've given them $22 billion. In the past 2 years, $22 billion in supplemental funds. So that's on top of the $3 billion a year we get is the supplemental funds. When we went out fighting all of the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, there was a portion of money budgeted for the wars. But how many times did Bush come back to Congress and say we need supplemental funds? And so it's not only the money that is in the budget, it's also the supplemental funds that you don't seem to understand, Konstantin.
But the defense budget isn't about fighting all these foreign wars. The defense budget is about protecting your empire, which gives you access to, you basically control all of Europe, right? America dominates Europe. You basically decide what happens in Western Europe. You dominate parts of Asia. You get the resources that come with that. You get whatever oil you want from wherever you need it. You get to control the world.
So you get the resources. So, and he makes this case several times here, is that the American empire, the benefit of the American empire to Americans, because he's trying to, again, these are European guys that are trying to sell the need for America to be this empire because these are the benefits of the empire. You get all of these resources. Do we get all these resources, or do the resources go to the corporations and the robber barons that are spreading the empire? I mean, who gets the resources? And that's why I wanted you to take note when we were talking about Smedley Butler and the fact that the type of government that the robber barons, the business people, were trying to get Smedley Butler to, the kind of government they were trying to institute when they got Smedley Butler to create or to overthrow the Roosevelt government, was fascism. Fascism. The Italian Mussolini style fascism. What is Mussolini style fascism? Well, Mussolini tells you what Italian fascism is. This is a quote from Mussolini. Fascism should more appropriately be called corporatism because it is the merger of state and corporate power. who gets the resources of the empire? When the empire, and we're spending all this money so the empire can go and steal mineral resources and oil and all these other resources, does that go to the American people or does that go to the corporation? Does that go to make the corporations large and fat and rich, and the robber barons that are invested in the corporation large and fat and rich, and then those who are the citizens of America? We still have to pay an arm and a leg for those resources. It's not like gas is any cheaper or oil's any cheaper for us because we've gone out and executed this expansionist foreign policy, expanding the empire. It's corporatism, which is fascism. That's the fascism that they were trying to get Smedley Butler to help them institute in the 1930s. And that's the fascism that we have today. Mussolini-style fascism, which should more appropriately be called corporatism because it is the merger of state and corporate power. So, no, you guys are not going to convince us to support this foreign policy that makes the United States an empire, that takes us from our constitutional republic, that grows our government, and say that, oh, you're getting all these resources we don't get any resources from it. The resources go to the robber barons, to the business people, to the people that tried to stage the business plot in the 1930s and end up staging it in 1963. They're the ones that benefit from the empire, from the expansionist foreign policy, Constantine.
In Western Europe, you dominate parts of Asia. You get the resources that come with that. You get whatever oil you want from wherever you need it. You get to control the world. You have a defense budget not because you want to invade Iraq. You have a defense budget because you're the biggest country. I know you don't like hearing this, but in the absence of a neutral world policeman, America, someone's going to be the world police. Someone's going to be going around kicking ass, right? And if you want to have the 25% of the world's resources, that's you.
Yeah, I guess I don't mind hearing it. I think that is the way things are. But it's illegal under our Constitution. The American people never decided that they want this.
And we don't want it.
In fact, the American people are saying pretty loudly, we don't want this anymore.
We don't
want to pour money into all these different parts of the world. And I don't agree with you that we get more bang for our buck than we otherwise would.
No, we don't.
Look, it's very easy, even going into like these abstract conversations about like empire or who controls the shipping lanes or what would fill the vacuum if we didn't do that. Okay, but we still blew trillions of dollars on these. It's like $8 trillion for the war on terrorism
we agree
total.
On that. Yeah. Right. We agree it was a mistake.
Okay, fine. But, right, and we also agree not just a mistake, but like a horrifically catastrophic moral mistake.
Immoral, yeah.
But also it's $8 trillion. That's a huge, huge chunk.
$8 trillion. Our national debt is $38 trillion. $8 trillion is almost a quarter of our entire national debt. That's what we spent on the war. I think that 8 trillion is a little bit lowballing it. A little bit over 2 trillion in Iraq. That's just Iraq and Afghanistan. 5 trillion in Afghanistan, a little bit over 2 trillion in Iraq. But what about Syria? What about Lebanon? What about Yemen? What about Sudan? What about, I think that $8 trillion is a little bit lowballing it. But even if you go with the $8 trillion number, that's almost a quarter of our entire national debt now. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money.
Of this. So listen, if you're arguing that entitlement programs, yes, they account for even more of the budget. And yes, they're a huge part of this whole, monstrosity of big government.
Absolutely.
No one's denying
that. No one's denying that the entitlements are a problem. But what I'm saying is that we would have more money domestically to handle and to stabilize our entitlements if we weren't going all around the world acting like the global police, expanding the empire and spending all this money for other people. All right. I don't have time to go further into this. There's a lot more that I wish I could share from this podcast because I think it's very good and you should go and watch the entire thing. It's not all good, but they get into some good conversations here. I want to get into the Nick Fuentes interview and play some clips from that I've been wanting to play for the past couple of weeks because this Nick Fuentes thing, we're in our 4th week of this controversy that ensued after Tucker Carlson interviewed Nick Fuentes, and everybody's trying to act like that's the reason that this civil war is going on in the Republican Party. And what I've been trying to explain to you is that this civil war has nothing to do with the interview that Tucker Carlson did with Nick Fuentes, and that this has been going on as far back as June. I played clips of a report from The Hill that showed that Mark Levin and Tucker Carlson were beefing back in June, but Tucker Carlson even took it back to January, and he says that as soon as Trump was sworn in, that Benjamin Netanyahu came over and was trying to recruit Trump to take us into Iran, because of course they want to take us into Iran and spend up more of our money while they go and steal their oil. And the whole reason that Iran is a problem is because of the disastrous foreign policy that was implemented in the 1950s under people like Prescott Bush. Prescott Bush was a senator in the 1950s. You can see him right here. Who's Prescott Bush here with? Dwight Eisenhower. Dwight Eisenhower was the president of the United States in the 1950s. Dwight Eisenhower's Secretary of State was John Foster Dulles. John Foster Dulles' brother, Allen Dulles, was the head of the CIA, and Richard Nixon was his vice president. And all of this disastrous foreign policy, started in the 1950s, and they're the ones who overthrew the government of Mohammad Mossadegh in Iran in 1953. That started the blowback that created the revolution in the 1970s, and then also dealing with the mullahs. We're dealing with the mullahs now because of what they did in 1953. So the whole reason Iran is a problem is because of what you guys did. But Benjamin Netanyahu came over and has been trying to recruit Trump and trying to take the United States into Iran to overthrow the mullahs now. And that is what started this debate and this feud between Tucker Carlson and Mark Levin and the kosher conservatives. But Trump came out yesterday, and he was questioned about Tucker Carlson interviewing Nick Fuentes, and he pours cold water on the kosher conservatives. Take a listen.
Carlson recently had a friendly interview with anti-Semite Nick Fuentes.
Anti-Semite.
Tucker Carlson. What role do you think Tucker Carlson should play in the Republican Party and the conservative movement going forward?
Well, I found him to be good. I mean, he said good things about me over the years.
I hate that.
I think he's good. We've had some good interviews. I did an interview with him. We had 300 million hits. You know that. Look, I can't tell him. Will you let me finish my statement? You are the worst. You're with Bloomberg,
Love
right?
this guy.
You are the worst. I don't know why they even have you. We've had some great interviews with Tucker Carlson, but you can't tell him who to interview. I mean, if he wants to interview Nick Fuentes, I don't know much about him, but if he wants to do it,
let him do it. Let him do it. He can interview who he wants to. If you want to interview Nick Fuentes, you interview him. You do your own interview, just like Tucker Carlson said. If you want to bring Nick Fuentes on and challenge him, because you say Tucker Carlson didn't challenge him enough, you do it. But Trump said, I can't tell him who to interview. I like Tucker. That's what he says. I like Tucker. Yeah. Now, it's funny because I guess this was last month I think it was last month and this is one of the kosher conservatives who are on the side of Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin and the others. Dinesh D'Souza actually did a debate with Nick Fuentes on Alex Jones' show. Alex Jones hosted it, and nobody criticized Dinesh D'Souza and said, "Oh, I can't believe that you debated Nick Fuentes," and I can't believe Alex Jones brought Nick Fuentes on. Nobody made a big deal about that. But as soon as Tucker Carlson interviewed Nick Fuentes, then oh my God, the sky's falling. But I want you to listen to what Dinesh D'Souza says about Nick Fuentes at the end of the debate here.
I also want to commend you. I mean, I don't think I've met too many 26-year-olds who could speak with the confidence and kind of background knowledge that you have. So it's been a pleasure for me to engage with you in this debate.
I want to commend you. I don't think that there's too many smart 26-year-olds that have a command of the issues and that can articulate themselves. I want to commend you. Look at this look at this tongue bath that Dinesh D'Souza is giving Nick Fuentes at the end of their debate. And then when Tucker Carlson interviews him, then, oh my God, the sky's falling. Tucker Carlson interviewed Nick Fuentes. All right, I don't have very much time, but I want to get into some of these clips from the Tucker Carlson, Nick Fuentes interview. I've been wanting to get into these clips for the past few podcasts. I'll get into as much as I can, but I want to start with this. This is the beginning of their interview, and I want you to listen to what Tucker Carlson says. He gives you the purpose, the reason that he was interviewing Nick Fuentes. Take a listen.
Nick Fuentes, thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I wanted to meet you. I've heard about you.
I've heard about you.
So, well, thank you. I want to understand what you believe, and I want to give you a chance in a minute to just lay it out.
That's the purpose of the interview. That's the purpose of the interview. Tucker brought Nick Fuentes on because I want to understand what you believe, and I want you to give you the opportunity to lay it out in your own words. That's the entire purpose of this interview. Everybody's saying that Tucker Carlson was hard on Ted Cruz, but he gave Nick Fuentes a softball interview. Well, maybe the purpose for interviewing Ted Cruz was a different purpose than interviewing Nick Fuentes. The purpose of the interviewing Nick Fuentes, Tucker says in his own words here, is to give Nick Fuentes the opportunity to lay out what he believes in his own words, and he wants to understand what he believes. That was the purpose.
So, well, thank you. I want to understand what you believe, and I want to give you a chance in a minute to just lay it out, not what you're pivoting against, which are a lot of the same thing. I agree with you on some of the things you're pivoting against for sure, but what do you affirmatively believe? So I just want to stand back and let you explain it. But first I want
to just stand back and let you explain what you believe. And then later on in the interview, he reemphasizes that right here. I want to play this clip. Take a listen.
So like anytime you say a whole group of people is responsible for the sins of some of its members, like I'm out.
Yeah, but that's not my view.
It's not. Okay. So tell me your views. Like rather than you're one of those people, one of the reasons I wanted to meet you is you're one of those people who is defined by clips.
Yes.
And I'm one of those people also.
Yes. Yeah.
So I thought that this was very interesting, and I wanted to point this out because Tucker Carlson says, I want to know what you believe, because the only things that I know about you is because of these clips, these little small clips that everybody is playing of you taking out of context. Sometimes the clips are old. Maybe your views have changed. Maybe some of these clips that they're playing are you when you were 18. You're 26 now. I mean, you could have changed your views. Only thing I know about you is clips. And I thought that was very interesting that Tucker says that. He says that I want you to lay out what you believe and to articulate what you believe, because you're one of those people that the only thing I know about you is clips. And I thought that it was very interesting because everyone attacking Tucker Carlson for doing this interview, the only thing they do is play these small clips of Nick Fuentes. Again, maybe taken out of context, maybe his views have changed, but these short little clips of Nick Fuentes have been played over and over again to demonize Tucker Carlson for interviewing Nick Fuentes. And it's all these clips with no context, and it's exactly what Tucker Carlson said, that you're one of those people that we only know from clips. I want to play this video that Ben Shapiro put out, and he does exactly what Tucker Carlson says. He plays a bunch of small little edited clips of Nick Fuentes to demonize him. Take a listen.
Nick Fuentes says that women are whores who shouldn't be in politics.
I will continue my crusade against women in politics. It's always like this, and it's so ironic. Women are like, I don't like, when you say, you have to affect the face. When you say to repeal the 19th Amendment, that offends me. That hurts my feelings. It's like, have you ever stopped and considered that maybe if you get offended, there's such a strong emotional reaction to political opinions you disagree with across the board? Maybe that's one of the reasons why you shouldn't be making political decisions. I'm not attacking women. I'm attacking whores. You have no problems, right? I'm attacking whores. I'm attacking sluts. Stupid, dirty bitches.
Nick Fuentes says that Jim Crow was actually better for black people.
It was better for them too, number one, but number two, who cares? Who cares? You know, enough with the Jim Crow stuff. Who cares? Oh, they had to drink out of a different water fountain. Big fucking deal. Oh no, they had to go to a different school. Their water fountain in that famous picture was worse. Who cares? Grow up. Drink out of the fucking water fountain. It's water. It's the same. You know? And, you know, even if it was bad, who cares? Who cares? It's better. It's better in general. We all agree it was better for them. It's better for us. Better in general.
Nick Fuentes says that white people are justified in being racist.
Reason that we talk about this, by the way, I know a lot of black people see this and they go,
so
man,
you get the picture. You get the picture. Tucker says, you're one of those people that I want to know what you think. I want to know what you believe. That's why I brought you on. And you're one of those people that I only know from clips. And that's exactly what the detractors did. They play the clips, the small clips, and you don't get any context. You don't really get to the heart of what Nick Fuentes believes. And the real reason that Tucker Carlson brought this guy on is because he wanted to distinguish what he believed, what Tucker Carlson believed, from what Nick Fuentes believed, and show the world the difference between Nick Fuentes and people that are rational, people that are not bombastic and controversial. And he says it here in this next clip that I'm going to play. This will get to the heart of it. I don't have much time here, but I want you to listen to this part.
I do know, though, and this is the last criticism I will level, and it's maybe not even your fault, but I do know that, you know, the coordinated attacks against totally reasonable questions about what's in America's interest and what's not, those are all coordinated by the Israeli government. It's all come to light now. And they're against me. I've always thought I have the world's most moderate position on Israel. Don't hate Israel. Just don't want to get involved in their wars. Don't want to pay for this. Don't want to pay for abortion on demand in a foreign country. Sorry. When we're cutting food stamps on our own, like, that's outrageous. It's not America first. That's my view. I'm not embarrassed of it at all. They are totally determined to take me out, I think, because I'm reasonable. Who would disagree with that? And call me all these names, the most dangerous anti-Semite. I'm not even an anti-Semite. And they're not doing that to you because, this is my view, and that's not necessarily your fault, but because they're like, Fuentes discredits the reasonable people because he's always banging on about the Jews. And so he makes everyone else look like a Nazi. And so it's like he's playing a pretty valuable role in the same.
So you see what Tucker's doing here. He said, so the whole reason that Tucker brought him on, he wanted Nick Fuentes to lay out his views, but he also wanted to distinguish himself from Nick Fuentes. And he's saying that Nick Fuentes plays a valuable role for the people that want to discredit the reasonable people, the people that are genuinely asking questions about America's foreign policy, America's role as this empire across the world. And you give them the fuel to discredit reasonable people like me that are asking reasonable questions because you're so bombastic, because you're so controversial. You play a role for them that they can use you to discredit me. That's what Tucker was saying here.
He's always banging on about the Jews. And so he makes everyone else look like a Nazi. And so it's like he's playing a pretty valuable role in the same way that Israel has always funded extremism throughout the Middle East, including Hamas.
Israel, this is the same. So he's blaming Israel for doing this. I'm not sure that it's Israel, but I do believe that Tucker's onto something here because Israel does do this. Israel has done this. Israel funded Hamas because Hamas was more radical than the PLO, and they knew that they could discredit the Palestinian people with Hamas more than with the PLO. They said it. They said it. This is an article in the Times of Israel. For years, Netanyahu propped up Hamas, and now it's blown up in our faces. This article comes out on October 8th, 2023, the day after the October 7th attack. For years, Netanyahu and the Likud have propped up Hamas with financial aid to Hamas to prop up Hamas because they knew that Hamas was this radical terrorist group that they could use to discredit the Palestinians, that the PLO was not. The PLO was more reasonable than Hamas. That's what Tucker is saying here. So they're using Nick Fuentes, who's more bombastic and more controversial, to discredit the reasonable people. Smotrich, he says it. Listen.
The Palestinian Authority is a burden, and Hamas is a terrorist organization that no one will recognize, and no one will give it status in the ICC. No one will let them lead a decision in the Security Council. The main pitch we are playing now is international delegitimization. Hamas, at this point, in my opinion, will be an asset.
Hamas at this point will be an asset. That's why they funded Hamas. That's why they supported Hamas, because Hamas is an asset to help us discredit the PLO and the Palestinian people. And that's what Tucker Carlson was accusing Nick Fuentes of when people were saying, oh, he went soft on Nick Fuentes. I had more clips that I wanted to play from this interview. I don't know that we'll get back into it on Friday because I really want to get back into some of the Jewish history and get back into the Babylonian captivity. We'll see where it goes. Hope you guys have a great week, and I will see you on Friday.